If you've been subscribed to my channel for a long time, you will remember that I've covered all this PewDiePie stuff before, and I've had a lot of drama with it, like being harassed and being brigaded with like bigger right-wing channels directing their audiences to my videos to basically just like write crazy comments. I might show you a couple of them from my old videos. But basically, I was thinking about this a lot, and I've been thinking about it a lot because recently, Amnesty International came out with a report that said Israel is an apartheid state. And one of the first groups to jump out and say this was like slander and essentially anti-Semitic was the Anti-Defamation League. Now, I remember at the time with all this drama around PewDiePie, in my video I said, although they might do some good work, I do not like their stance on like the Palestinians and Palestine in general, right?
Can you have problems with the Anti-Defamation League? Sure you can. Do I have problems with them? Yes, there are some I have. For example, they've smeared Ilhan Omar and Jeremy Corbyn for criticising Israel. That's a problem I have with them. They've given seminars in Israel to Americans about how to militarise their police force. I have a problem with that as well. Did PewDiePie say he had a problem with any of this stuff? Do you think PewDiePie cares about the ADL smearing Jeremy Corbyn and Ilhan Omar? You know for a fact he doesn't care about that. Do his fans care about that? You know there is barely one fan out of his millions that cares about that. They don't care about the stuff I've mentioned. They would never care. If I said that to them, they would probably like Israel.
But lots of people had a massive problem with the ADL, and that's why I want to use this whole issue to frame the video, because so many people hated PewDiePie for donating to the ADL, so much so he rescinded the donation, but most people could not articulate why they didn't like the ADL beyond, well, they said Pepe the Frog was a hate symbol. And I find it like really interesting that one of the most notorious episodes for the ADL on YouTube and online, nearly no one who was criticizing them actually makes any good criticisms when there is so much to criticize. Is extremely problematic. And even, you know, someone who's quite aware of it, the stuff I found out for researching this video was very surprising. But I think it's telling on a couple fronts. One, a lot of people who criticized the ADL and PewDiePie's edgelord audience were just anti-Semites. Two, a lot of them actually love Israel as well, or at the very least like Israel, so they're not going to criticize the ADL for its stances on Israel and Zionism. And three, a lot of them were just like really butthurt children who were just repeating what they'd heard from other content creators. So in the video, what we're going to do is just talk about the backlash, show you people making arguments against the ADL which really have nothing to them, before actually making a good case about why the ADL is problematic based on actually legitimate reasons and not they said the OK symbol was like alt-right, or they don't like Pepe the Frog, or they're trying to censor PewDiePie. Before we go any further, this is another video that is going to be demonetized, so if you want to support my content going forward for the future, please consider becoming a patron. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible to make a sustainable Patreon. At the moment, you get access to the private patrons Discord server, and you get my Nintendo Switch friend code. Also, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and Instagram. I've really been enjoying live streaming lately, and those are archived on the Kavernacle Extra. Thanks so much for everyone for tuning in lately. Also, because a lot of you tell me that you forget, please like the video, and if you have something to say, think about leaving a comment. I read all the comments and reply to a couple of them, and also it just helps the video out. So if you've got something to say, please leave it in the comments. Oh, also one more thing. I'm filming this in the day, which I don't really do. I've been hearing a dog barking loads, and I've also been hearing like loads of noise around the apartment like block. If you hear that stuff, I apologize. I have got software on that removes echoes and tries to remove like outside sound, but it's not perfect. So cast your mind back to 2019 and let's go into the drama before giving a bit more backstory onto why this became such an issue and how PewDiePie's audience are full of like these edgelords who might hate ADL for certain reasons. So PewDiePie rescinds 50k pledge to Jewish charity after fans spread conspiracy theories. After PewDiePie pledged to make a plush donation of 50 grand to the Anti-Defamation League, an advocacy group founded to combat anti-Semitism, hundreds of his fans went into full conspiracy mode, questioning whether he had been blackmailed into doing so. PewDiePie, who'd been subject to controversy in the past for making anti-Semitic jokes, put the conspiracies to rest in a tweet today. However, he reversed his decision, releasing a YouTube video in which he rescinded his pledge to donate the ADL. In today's video, he explained his decision. When we were planning the collaboration, we thought it would be nice to donate to a charity as a way to celebrate. I think it was like 100 million subscribers or something or whatever, or 10 million subscribers. I made the mistake of picking a charity I was advised instead of picking a charity I'm personally passionate about, which is 100% my fault. When I uploaded the video talking about the charity, it was very brief. People could tell something was up. The whole internet just didn't believe it. Why is he donating to his charity? Look at his face, full conspiracy mode. He was very interesting to watch that unfold. Laughed PewDiePie. He continued, I saw it as an opportunity to put an end to these alt-right claims that have been thrown against me. It wasn't to try and clear my name or stay grace. If it was, I would have done it years ago, but after the Christchurch tragedy, I felt a responsibility to do something because it's no longer just about me. It affected other people in a way, and I'm not okay with that. I've struggled to figure out how to do that, but this was not the right way to go about it. I knew it wasn't perfect, but I also didn't know a lot of things that surfaced throughout the whole thing about the charity that doesn't fit at all. So I understand why people had concerns about it. These are things I would have known myself if I'd just taken my time. It really doesn't feel genuine for me to proceed with the donation at this point, and I instead want to actually take my time and keep the intent I had, but do it to the right charity, doing it properly. I just wanted to make that clear. I'm sorry for all the confusion. I'm sorry for messing this up. That's what I do. Reach for comment. The ADL said that the ADL learned about this potential donation when everyone else did. When he made the announcement on his channel earlier this week, we have not received any communication from him beyond that. So for those of you who've missed it or just want to go down memory lane a bit, basically PewDiePie has like cultivated this edgelord audience. A lot of people on the alt-right absolutely love this guy because of his edgy humor that often just leans into like Nazi stuff. So an article from 2017, the controversy over YouTube star PewDiePie and his anti-Semitic jokes explained. A recent Wall Street Journal investigation into his YouTube channel found a total of 9 videos posted since August 2016 that featured Nazi imagery or anti-Semitic humor. In one video posted on January 11th, PewDiePie hired a pair of performers from the freelance website Fiverr to hold up a sign saying "Death to all Jews," which he claims was essentially a thought experiment on the nature of the digital marketplace. As a result of the investigation, he's lost 2 major partnerships, most notably with Disney. In another part of the video, PewDiePie continued to criticize the absurdity of Fiverr's freelance service, and he showed a clip of an Israeli-based Fiverr freelancer who made a video while dressed as Jesus declaring that Hitler did nothing wrong. After Fiverr responded by suspending the freelancer's account, PewDiePie joked in another deleted video, "It's a little bit ironic that Jews somehow found another way to fuck over Jesus." As part of its investigation, the Wall Street Journal captured clips from all of these videos, as well as his defense of these jokes. It also discovered that he had inserted clips of Nazi imagery into many of his other videos. In a January 14th video about the Kazoo Kid meme, he included an audio clip of the Nazi party anthem while bowing over a swastika as part of the secret summoning ritual. The Wall Street Journal noted that near the beginning of a since deleted February 5th video, he also included a very brief Nazi salute with a Hitler voiceover saying "Sieg Heil," and the text saying "Nazi confirmed." And he said about all of this, "Though this is not my intention, I understand that these jokes were ultimately offensive." He got into more controversy for obviously saying the N-word on stream, and then in 2018, YouTube's most popular user amplified anti-Semitic rhetoric. So in a since edited video on December 9th, he recommended several YouTube channels he said he's been enjoying. One of those channels is called ER and ordered its great video essays, including one on Death Note. To casual observers, his support of ER might have appeared harmless, one YouTuber supporting another, but a more than cursory dive into the channel would have revealed several instances of disturbing imagery, slurs, and white supremacist messaging. ER's creator even refers to his reputation as a racist in the channel's FAQ. In a response, PewDiePie released a follow-up on December 11th in which he described the incident as an oopsie. "All I said was I liked the guy's anime reviews. I said publicly a year and a half ago I was going to distance myself from Nazi jokes and all that kind of stuff. Generally I've done that and I don't really have a reason to dip into that again. It's just stupid." And of course he became even more like embroiled in controversy. Then the Christchurch shooting happened. Why did the Christchurch shooter name drop YouTuber PewDiePie? During the live stream of the shooting, the shooter said subscribe to PewDiePie. PewDiePie responded and said, "I feel absolutely sickened for having my name uttered by this person. My heart and thoughts go out to the victim's family and everyone affected by this tragedy." As someone who's experienced like a lot of harassment from PewDiePie fans, including insane racism directed against me for people thinking I'm Jewish, and just like crazy stuff as well. Like I've made loads of videos on how they've responded to my videos criticizing him. I can say firsthand that obviously a guy with a massive audience is gonna have that element in his audience, but a guy who built his career cultivating edgelord humor is of course gonna have that a bit more, and it's not surprising he attracts these elements. To combat his image, that's why he donated to the ADL in the first place. But again, a lot of people also found it very suspect that he donated to the ADL and then rescinded it, and it's obviously explicitly a Jewish charity. And then he got a lot of criticism for wearing that Georgian cross as well. loads of people were thinking it was just like a massive dog whistle all round to like his following. Because this video is about the ADL and not PewDiePie specifically, now I want to get into the reaction of content creators online like Tim Pool and The Quartering, but also his own audience. Here we're going to get into it, how these people cannot properly articulate why they don't like the ADL or why the ADL is bad. To them, the ADL is just bad because they have a database of often public symbols that the alt-right use as a dog whistle. And of course, this is a thing that actually exists. The alt-right co-opt normal things as dog whistles, like we've had in the past, like the clown emoji, we've had the OK sign, we've had numerous other things. But these guys seem to think they're just trying to make everything into a Nazi thing. If Nazis co-opt stuff, like even recently those sunglasses or Hawaiian shirts, it doesn't mean everyone who wears them is a Nazi, but of course, if you're in that group, it's a signal to other people in that group. So initially on PewDiePie submissions, which is populated by like a bunch of 12-year-olds, PewDiePie statement on the ADL donation. So this is so small brain, he's funding his haters, this is stupid. There's 50k that's going to be used to defame people who, unlike Pewds, can't defend themselves. This is a horrible PR response and doesn't make any sense. I want to move on, so I'm donating 50k to the group who tried to take down anyone who's worth watching YouTube in general, responsible for all the shit going down on YouTube, and the worst sin of all, scare PewDiePie Season 2 from being cancelled. Doesn't change the fact that a piece of shit organisation got $50k. So then it's just another post talking about the ADL and the OK hate symbol with a load of his audience just posting the OK emoji into the comments. Another post saying, what, you're never donating to the ADL. Other people saying, fuck the ADL. Why? Tried to respond, but it got censored. So here's the screenshot. And the screenshot is the ADL talking about commending Disney's decision to sever ties of PewDiePie's following his posting of videos on YouTube containing swastikas and other anti-Semitic content, including an image of two men holding a sign saying death to all Jews, and the director saying, thank you Disney for severing ties with PewDiePie. So the people are actually mad that a Jewish organization that originally started to combat anti-Semitism is actually happy companies are distancing themselves after someone told like anti-Semitic jokes. Again, I think it shows a lot of problems in that his audience is hating this organization pretty much just for that and for documenting how the alt-right use dog whistles. Some more comments. The ADL is an activist organization that has tried to ban Felix multiple times and declared the OK hand and Pepper the Frog a hate symbol. They were basically part of the group that tried to deplatform him during the Wall Street Journal situation. Him donating to an organization that obviously doesn't like online creators seems weird, and some are even thinking he might have had his hands tied. But here's just another post, hashtag stop the ADL, posting a YouTube comment saying, copy and paste this, the ADL is an organization founded to subvert blame from a rapist murderer who is Jewish onto a poor illiterate black man who had nothing to do with it, and they're deleting every single comment mentioning the donation PewDiePie made to his organization that is pretending to care for the rights of people. He is being blackmailed. YouTube has defaulted your comment section to show as newest first and attempt to steer attention away from the ADL. The fact that YouTube is actually bothering with deleting comments too speaks volumes about the influence that ADL has. Why does him being Jewish matter? It doesn't matter him being Jewish. What matters is that they blamed an innocent guy. I know, but the comment is saying he is Jewish and has no use. Well, like all Jews do, they relate everything bad to the Holocaust to the point where, yes, 6 million died, but they exaggerate how bad they were treated. Being a Jew and using it as a crush is bullshit. You are right, I did exaggerate. However, there are still a few people and companies that do it, including the ADL. Another comment that is like fash like the other one. The ADL amounts to a hate group that ironically defames Christians and anyone with right-leaning opinions. They threaten free speech and have tried to get Pew's channel shut down before. They pressured Disney to cancel scare PewDiePie. And obviously there's just loads of comments saying that the ADL is brainwashing everyone, like totally not anti-Semitic at all. So no mention of the Palestinians, no mention of the ADL often working with law enforcement in the US and Israel, no mention of working to demonize leftists in like the 50s and 60s, no mention of the actual bad things that ADL has done, just mentions of like them making a database of hate symbols and them being happy that companies distance themselves from PewDiePie after he made loads and loads of Nazi jokes to his teenage audience. And then of course some like outright anti-Semitism in there as well. This isn't just his young teenage fans who can't articulate properly their problems with the ADL. Here is also a bunch of other right-wing channels who also can't articulate their real problems apart from like vague claims of censorship and stuff. I want to end it with a Tim Pool clip to show you these guys and like what their problems really are.
The ADL works with corporate groups that bankroll them 6- and 7-figure sums. And then it extorts apparently smaller creators. Maybe he did get extorted and he just said, you know what, the response isn't worth the 50K, fuck you. The ADL is not an anti-hate group at this point. You can argue that maybe they were for a while. They're not now. The ADL is a pro-censorship group that is fighting on behalf of the same groups that give it money in the first place in order to slam independent content creators off the internet, including people like PewDiePie.
Now, I'm not going to go into a long explanation of who the ADL is and what their history is and things like that. The long and the short of it is they have a serious, long and verifiable history of not only demanding deplatforming of creators they don't like, but also deplatforming PewDiePie himself. The ADL exists to basically shake down people that have money and influence through shaming, and they're just like basically Al Sharpton in that manner, in my opinion. They do almost no good.
Here's what I said initially. The ADL has caused collateral damage to tens of thousands of small creators' livelihoods. PewDiePie is not being a bigger man. He's taking a payday on a milestone he reached thanks to the YouTube community. He then funds an organization that will get people in that community banned. And I actually agree with the ADL on fighting hate, but I just disagree with their tactics. Well, that's a problem. If the ADL doesn't care about the smaller channels and the individuals, then they're not doing good. They're hurting the innocent. ADL calls on House leadership to take action after Rep Omar's anti-Semitic tweets. I want to highlight this because this is something I think the ADL has done good. It's not just black and white. Some people got angry with me before. I don't care. I believe this is fair, important, and rational. The ADL has called out Ilhan Omar. That is respectable. They have called on House leadership to take action against her. That is respectable. You want to praise the good behavior and criticize the bad behavior. Telling people to denounce Omar's statements, I think, is the right thing to do. She can still make offensive comments if she wants, fine. They're just saying, hey, say something about it.
So isn't that funny? For all the problems with the ADL, the good thing they do is dogpile Ilhan Omar. Not that she doesn't get enough hate already, because she speaks out for the rights of Palestinians, and of course groups like AIPAC and others absolutely hate her for consistently saying that Israel is an apartheid state. So it's funny that that's the thing Tim Pool agrees with them on, is their like anti-Palestinian activism, which is the bad part of the ADL. So again, it's funny that we had a situation with the biggest YouTuber on the platform embroiled with a controversy surrounding the ADL, yet after the controversy, no one was like wiser on the problems of the ADL. The only things they thought of the problems were essentially just exaggerated claims of censorship, and that they said the OK symbol can be used in a racist way. So yes, I maybe am looking back at this controversy to inform you, especially in light of recent statements by the organization, that the ADL is bad. You shouldn't donate to them. Like, maybe it was good that PewDiePie didn't do it, although he doesn't mention his reasons. I hardly believe he didn't donate to them because of their activism against Palestinians. So now let's get into all the problems with the ADL. So just there's been some recent stuff on Twitter that I've been seeing. So I want to get into like some more recent stuff before we go into the historical problems. So the ADL tweeted, boycotting Israel has been a long-standing biased tactic to isolate and delegitimize the state. We hope Irish lawmakers prevent this unreasonable move to ban imports and sales of Israeli goods from the West Bank. This in no way advances Israeli-Palestinian peace. I also find this ironic because aren't we all doing like a massive cultural boycott and economic boycott of Russia right now? I really doubt that ADL is going to come out and say that that delegitimizes the state of Russia and it's biased and racist. Now, what inspired me to make this video was the recent January Amnesty International report. Very, very detailed. Of course, I don't say these things lightly, where they concluded, which is something we've known for a long time, people who lived in apartheid South Africa, including the late Desmond Tutu, said Israel is an apartheid state. And a lot of the South Africans said Israeli apartheid is actually worse than South African apartheid. So a statement for the ADL on this is the ADL condemns Amnesty International's latest effort to demonize Israel. ADL issued the following statement: we have reviewed the Amnesty International UK's upcoming report on Israel and strongly condemn it as an effort to demonize Israel and undermine its legitimacy as the Jewish and democratic state. In an environment of rising anti-Jewish hate, this type of report is not only inaccurate, but also irresponsible and will likely lead to intensified anti-Semitism around the world. The new report goes beyond criticizing Israeli policies and actions to painting Israel's very creation as illegitimate, immoral, and faulted. Amnesty International's allegations that Israel's crimes go back to the sin of its creation in 1948 serve to present the Jewish and democratic state as a singularly illegitimate at its foundational roots. Such a hateful characterization not only delegitimizes the Israeli state enterprise and the Jewish right to self-determination in its historic homeland, but also undermines the visions of a mutually negotiated solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In addition, by using extreme language to attack Israel, including calling it an apartheid state, it feeds into an environment that emboldens those who seek to dismantle Israel and cast aspersions on those who support a Jewish and democratic state, including the vast majority of Jews around the world, and creates fertile ground for a hostile and at times anti-Semitic discourse. And then goes on to say that ADL believes in human rights organizations playing an important role in the world, but also they have a statement on their website that says, support Israel, a Jewish and democratic state. Israel is the national homeland of the Jewish people. The overwhelming majority of Jewish people around the world consider a connection to Israel as part of their identity. For decades, the ADL has worked to support a secure, Jewish and democratic state of Israel and to promote a strong and constructive US-Israeli relationship. The ADL recognizes that, like other countries, Israel should not be exempt from criticism. However, the ADL educates and engages on how certain harsh expressions about the Jewish state and Zionism can be anti-Semitic. We raise awareness about efforts to delegitimize Israel's existence, which is often a characteristic of the BDS movements, campaigns, and initiatives. But to undermine to how they care about the Israel-Palestine stuff, ADL welcomes President Trump's announcement on Jerusalem, calls for a focus on peace and negotiations. The ADL welcomed the announcement by Trump and the US to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and that he is relocating the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The ADL also welcomed the president's statements on the commitment to a negotiated Israeli-Palestinian peace and urged the US, the parties, and regional leadership to focus on reducing tensions and creating the conditions for rapid resumptions of peace negotiations. Anyone who knows anything about Israel-Palestine knows that recognizing Jerusalem as the Israeli capital is insanely incendiary to the peace process, where the Palestinians obviously live in East Jerusalem, and it's probably going to be central to a potential Palestinian state. If you're saying that belongs to Israel, that is of course inflaming tensions. But I think that shows everything wrong with the ADL in a nutshell. If it's meant to be an organization broadly combating discrimination now, not just anti-Semitism, it goes on to keep saying Israel is democratic, Israel is democratic. How is it democratic if they keep a bunch of people locked up in an open-air prison, which they bomb? You don't have equal rights. You have no say in the people who essentially control your life. And while technically, Gaza used to have elections, they're not free. It's really hard to leave. There's a blockade by Egypt and Israel. But I don't know how it's anti-Semitic to doubt the legitimacy of Israel. I'm against Zionism. I think Zionism is an inherently racist ideology. In my mind, I make no connection between Zionism and people who believe in Judaism and Jewish people. And of course, it's extremely problematic to conflate the two and believe that every Jewish person somehow supports the legitimacy of the Israeli state, when some of the most religious groups, like Orthodox Jews in New York, for example, do not support it. So are they some sort of anti-Semites, really, really religious Jewish people? And the problem is, I think they're saying is people focus on Israel, but people focus on Israel because in my mind, what Israel is basically a speed run of the United States or Canada or Australia or all these settler colonial nations, because it's happening in real time in front of our eyes. We broadly can't do anything to stop the colonization of the United States. Of course, there are still natives fighting their battles against the US government and the Canadian government who deserve our support, but by and large, most of that colonization was done by the time we were all born. Because of genocidal policies, most of these native populations were reduced. But of course, we can still fight for them to get their historic land back, but it's just a harder prospect now. Their whole identity is being constantly erased, and still to this day is being erased. But with Israel, they're doing that right now to the Palestinians. And of course, there are different forms of Zionism. There are people who are more hardline Zionists, but with the government of Netanyahu and the successors and how in bed they are with Israeli settlers, who are these far-right groups of Israelis who are stealing Palestinian land illegally and colonizing it illegally, ethnically cleansing them, killing them, erasing Palestinian identity. Like I'm saying, it's like a speed run of the United States, or it's a speed run of Canada. Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, these are also illegitimate settler colonial nations based on native genocide and stealing land. For a lot of us, Israel is just another extension of that. It doesn't matter what group of people are doing it, doesn't matter what religion they believe in, doesn't matter what ideology they justify this stuff with. It can be manifest destiny or it can be Zionism. At the end of the day, it's settler colonialism and it's a colonial state, and that's why we oppose it. Hundreds of thousands of people colonizing an area, kicking most of the inhabitants out, killing them, and then oppressing them and ethnically cleansing them is not something unique to Israel. And I'm sure people don't have a problem with us historically calling that out on what the United States have done or Canada and stuff. So why can't we call it out when we're seeing that today? So now I want to go more into the detailed history and insight from people who actually worked for this organization and talking about how different donors or different like political things influence their stances on various different civil rights issues. However, ADL's Israel advocacy undermines its civil rights work. Interviews of 8 former ADL employees found that CEO Jonathan Greenblatt has repeatedly chosen to support crackdowns on criticism of Israel over protecting civil liberties by Alex Ken and Jacob Hutt. So in recent months, criticism of the ADL for its law enforcement partnerships and Israel advocacy have gained more newfound criticism. In August 2020, a coalition of more than 60 social justice organizations launched the Drop the ADL campaign, calling on progressives to reject the group that has a history and ongoing pattern of attacking social justice movements led by communities of color, queer people, immigrants, Muslims, and Arabs, and other marginalized groups, while aligning itself with police, right-wing leaders, and perpetrators of state violence. The focus of civil rights organizations should be on critiquing state power, not about targeting those who critique state power, said Vince Warren, the executive director for the Center of Constitutional Rights. If the ADL took the same position with America that it does with Israel, it would support passing laws in Congress that say you can't say anything bad about America. That just doesn't jibe with what modern social justice should look like. Some former ADL employees say that even if Greenblatt wished to take a stand for Palestinian human rights, he would have to contend with donors who have no interest in change. These donors have a huge amount of influence in some ways that are kind of bizarre, said one former ADL lawyer who described fulfilling personal research requests from a donor on an issue only tangentially related to the lawyer's work. In contrast to the younger generation of ADL staff members, these influential donors lean conservative. Their donor base cares about Israel, said a former ADL staffer who requested to be anonymous. The more liberal and current the projects are, the harder they are to sell. The ADL donors include some of the most prominent pro-Israel elites in America today, like Trump backer and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who's donated about $145,000, and hedge fund manager Seth Klarman, who has given $1.6 million since 2011. 3 former ADL employees said that during their recent tenure at the organization, Bernard Marcus, the conservative founder of Home Depot, was an anonymous underwriter of the ADL Center on Extremism. In May of last year, the ADL also hired longtime FBI official Greg Airy to enhance the organization's relationship with law enforcement. His 2003 to 2005 deployments to the infamous Guantanamo Bay prison camp to oversee detainees is conspicuously absent from his official ADL bio. So people who work for the ADL also worked at Gitmo. At times, the pro-Israel and pro-law enforcement approaches of the ADL have coalesced. Perhaps the ADL's most controversial program is its annual training trip bringing US law enforcement to Israel. The trip, known as Leadership Seminar in Israel, Resilience and Counterterrorism, provides attendees with advanced education to prevent, prepare for, and respond to terrorist threats and violence. To date, at least 200 law enforcement agents from local police departments, as well as federal agencies like ICE and the US Marshals, have taken the ADL-funded trips, meeting with Israeli police officers, former intelligence officers, and soldiers, including those who serve in the occupied Palestinian territories. So isn't that nice? The ADL helps ICE and US Marshals meet with Israel to learn their tactics. Definitely a great organization for combating hate. I know this is like a big deep dive today. This video is probably going to be very, very long. Going into this a bit more, so the Anti-Defamation League is not what it seems from the Boston Review. So the ADL sought out or welcomed ways to participate with the state. It collaborated with the House of Un-American Activities Committees in the 40s and 50s. It also tried and largely failed for several decades to interest the FBI in considering a partnership. It found an opening in civil rights work where 10 years after the Voting Rights Act, ongoing racial conflict and white supremacist violence produced a new wave of demands for state action. In 1983, the ADL circulated a blacklist of Arab American political groups, academics and organizers, along with a few Jewish and Iranian groups, identifying them as pro-Arab sympathizers and anti-Semites. The ADL's complaint complaint was simply that Arab Americans were changing other Americans' minds about Israel. AIPAC produced a second list of enemies of Israel at the same time, written by an ADL staffer who moved between the two organizations. The ADL's conception of a leftist threat had already been guiding the organization for decades. In the 1980s, this idea had co-erred in neoconservatism, but in the civil rights circles, the ADL did not acknowledge its hostility to the left. Instead, it portrayed itself as progressive and anti-racist, to its left as rogue and misguided, if not marginal. So that article is really, really long, but it's really, really surprising how much activism they've been involved in to demonize like Black Power movements and various leftist groups in like various places among the US. But here's one more article I want to end with. This is a very recent one, and it came out just after the ADL's response to the Amnesty report. I joined the ADL to fight racism. It's actually doing the opposite, by Tasha Kameninski. In late 2017, while working at the Anti-Defamation League, I posted from my personal Facebook account criticizing the Israeli army for arresting Palestinian teenager Ahed Tamimi in her village of Nabi Salah in the occupied West Bank. I believed it was wrong, I wrote, for a minor to be held in a military prison. Shortly after, someone called my supervisor and requested I be fired. In the end, my supervisor simply told me to be more thoughtful about what I shared online, but it was clear that my politics on Palestine were under the microscope because of the organisation I work for. Within a few weeks, I decided to quit the organisation anyway. I joined the ADL in May 2016 as a Director of Development for Missouri, Eastern Kansas, and Southern Illinois. After receiving a master's from Brandeis in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies, I saw this job as an opportunity to use my knowledge of the region to promote greater understanding of the reality in Israel-Palestine and to help reduce Islamophobia in the Jewish community. Perhaps naively, I hadn't considered that my political beliefs, I am an anti-Zionist, would preclude any possibility of advancement for me in an organisation that brands itself as working to secure justice and fair treatment for all. My primary duty was to fundraise for the organisation by building relationships with major prospects and community stakeholders and planning events. I also got to sit on an anti-bias training workshops that our team conducted for various groups, among them police from the St. Louis area. At first, I was deeply impressed with the level of knowledge and facilitation shown by volunteers and staff who made the training possible, but gradually I began to notice that police officers from whom we led anti-bias training were completely disengaged and were never held accountable for it. When I spoke to police about the ADL, they'd often gush about the trip they took to Israel on the organization's dime, a trip where they learned about counter-terrorism and crowd control. I felt exceedingly uncomfortable with the program that helped send police to Israel for training because I knew that among its beneficiaries were one of the most undisciplined and dangerous forces in the United States, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, which was involved in brutally suppressing the Ferguson uprising following the police shootings of Michael Brown in 2014. Within months of my starting to work there, the ADL's stance on the matter became clear, namely that they viewed the St. Louis police as an embattled force being punished for the crimes of one bad apple, but this wasn't true. I'd seen firsthand the total aversion of these police officers to receiving anti-bias training. The things they would say during training sessions were appalling. A common refrain was that they didn't see the point of being there since the problem was really black on black crime. Conversations would often devolve into police officers venting about having to interact with black citizens or just their general disdain for people who didn't respect their authority. It wasn't just a few bad apples, it was the whole system, and we were enabling it, collaborating with it and giving it a shield to stand behind. The organisation continuously partnered with the police in the aftermath of extrajudicial shootings. This to me was a testament to the ADL's total disregard for the experience of black people in America. While I believe the ADL does at times do valuable work to educate about anti-Semitism, that work is completely undermined by the organization's commitment to upholding systems of oppression in Israel and the US, and by its collaboration with the US police and the Israeli government, including maintaining a policy preventing the organization and its staff from acknowledging anything to do with Palestine or the fact that Palestinians are living under Israeli military occupation. I decided it was time to go in late 2017 when we threw a brunch and award party for the St. Louis police, honouring two officers who had in fact solved the hate crime. My objection was that we invited Jeffrey Rauder, a former politician, ex-police officer and current executive director and business manager of the St. Louis Police Officers Association. He's well known for St. Louis of being an unequivocal white supremacist, for antagonizing the family of Michael Brown and the entire Ferguson community, and for sharing conspiracy theories about Obama. I didn't want to be in the same room as him, let alone invite him to an event I was planning. When I voiced his concerns to my direct supervisor, I was told that we simply had to invite him and that it would look bad if we didn't. That was it for me. I found another job in 2018, feeling ashamed at not having put my foot down. And when it comes down to it, the fact that the ADL is more willing to throw black Americans and Palestinians under the bus in order to secure funding from right-wing donors, until this changes, the organisation cannot in good conscience profess to be committed to justice and fair treatment for all. So, anti-SJWs, PewDiePie fans, all these different people, the ADL is not bad for pointing out hate symbols. The ADL is bad for funding trips for some of the most racist police departments in the US to go to Israel and learn new tactics. That's why they're bad. They're bad for collaborating with the US government to put down pro-Palestinian and left-wing groups calling for greater civil rights for different peoples. They're bad because they take massive fundings from some of the worst billionaires in America to be more pro-Israeli. They're bad because they dismiss legitimate reports about Israeli apartheid and occupation. And even though they say there's a difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, they often conflate the two to crush critics of Israel. And they will happily ally themselves with horrible right-wing fascist police forces while ignoring legitimate groups for civil rights. So who am I going to believe about the nature of Israel? Am I going to believe, anti-Zionist Jews who work for the ADL? Am I going to believe the people who fought South African apartheid? Am I going to believe Palestinian activists? Am I going to believe Israelis who are against the occupation and Jewish people against the occupation? Am I going to believe Amnesty International UK's really, really detailed report outlining something we all know? Or am I going to believe the ADL, funded by people like Robert Kraft, employing people who worked at Guantanamo Bay and helping sanitize the image of racist police departments and helping with their training? I know who I'm not going to believe about what is legitimate criticism of Israel or not. So maybe you were younger when this PewDiePie stuff happened, and maybe you thought you hated the ADL for the reasons a lot of these people thought they hated the ADL. But now you can actually not like it because I've given you a bunch of really legitimate, awful reasons why they are in fact really, really bad. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you want to follow me on social media, at the Kavernacle, Twitter, Instagram, support me on Patreon, check out the subreddit as well. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.